The art of bread making is something I'll probably never master. On the other hand, the art of eating well-made bread is something I'm already become quite proficient at. On the surface, making a loaf of bread seems so simple. Throw together a little flour, some water, a dash of salt, a bit of yeast, and voila! You have a golden loaf of melt-in-your-mouth perfection. But any baker will tell you that this is not the way it works. You see, bread is more than just ingredients. Every new batch is a unique creation. Why? Because bread dough is alive. Yes, that fourth ingredient I mentioned, yeast, is the catalyst the baker uses to bring the bread to life. And depending on what the customer has ordered, the baker will knead and shape that living dough in unique and different ways. For some types of bread, very little kneading and rising of the dough will take place before it quickly goes into the oven. Other times, the dough needs to rise and get knocked down and then rise again before it's ready to bake. Whatever method the experienced baker uses, when the time is right, out of the oven pops a perfect loaf of bread. You know, earnest prayers are a bit like this. The ingredients don't have to be complicated and wordy. Simple flour, water, and salt prayers can be powerful once God kneads and shapes them and adds the living yeast. We just need to be patient and wait for the great baker to open the oven door and deliver the daily bread that He has promised us. One of the biggest lies of the devil is that God only uses special people. And like all the enemy's lies, this one is based on a half-truth. God does use special people, but they are special because God uses them. As Peter said, you are a chosen people. You are royal priests, a holy nation, God's very own possession. As a result, you can show others the goodness of God, for He called you out of the darkness into His wonderful light. You know, being special has nothing to do with how you look, what you can do, or how smart you are. It has everything to do with the fact that you were created as a unique individual by none other than the Master of the universe. The same God who drew rainbows across the rain-washed skies, painted the morning sunrise, and scooped out the Grand Canyon is the same God who created you. That same God is right beside you. That same God hears your prayers. In fact, as God promises in His Word, when a believing person prays, great things happen. Every page of the Bible reinforces this. The term theologians use to describe this idea is omnipotence. Omni is a Latin prefix that means all. Potens means, potent or powerful. God is all-powerful. Don't apply earthly physics or limitations to Him because they have no effect over Him. As we read in the book of Job, the Almighty is beyond our reach and exalted in power. In His justice and great righteousness, He does not oppress. What this means is that you have taken on the name of Christ. You have clout with the most powerful being in the universe. And when you speak, God listens. When you pray, heaven takes note. Jesus said, when two of you get together on anything at all on earth and make a prayer of it, my Father in heaven goes into action. Paul says you actually have a seat with Christ in the heavens. You don't have a seat at the Supreme Court or in the House of Representatives, but something far more strategic, a seat in the government of God. Like a member of Congress, you represent a district. You speak on behalf of your family, your neighborhood, your softball team. You are an ambassador for Christ, as Paul said, and ambassadors represent the King. They carry with them the authorization of the one who sent them, and they speak with the authority of the throne. Your prayers can impact the very actions of God. For proof, consider the story of Elijah. He lived 8 centuries prior to the birth of Jesus. The northern kingdom had 20 kings, each of whom was evil. The evilest of the monarchs was Ahab. In his life is given this sad summary. There was never anyone like Ahab, who sold himself to do evil in the eyes of the Lord. Urged on by Jezebel, his wife, he behaved in the vilest manner by going after idols like the Amorites the Lord drove out before Israel. This was as dark a time as we ever read about in the history of Israel. Hope had boarded the last train and optimism had a seat on the final flight. The leaders were corrupt and the hearts of the people were cold. But comets are most visible against the black sky, and in the midst of the darkness a fiery comet by the name of Elijah appeared. His name means, "My God is Jehovah," and he lived up to it. At one point, Elijah gave King Ahab an unsolicited weather report. "As the Lord, the God of Israel lives, whom I serve, there will be neither dew nor rain in the next few years except at my word." Now Elijah's attack was calibrated. Baal was the fertility god of the pagans, the god they sought for rain and fertile fields. Elijah called for a showdown, the true God of Israel against the false god of the pagans. How could Elijah be so confident of the impending drought? Because he had prayed. And no casual prayer at that, but a radical, "Do whatever it takes, Lord, even if that means no water." Well, Ahab decided to take Elijah up on the offer. He sent word throughout Israel and assembled 450 prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel. Elijah, in turn, went before the people and said, "How long will you waver between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him, but if Baal is God, follow him." Now the word translated waver in this verse is the Hebrew word for dance. Elijah was literally asking the people, "How long are you going to do this dance between God and Baal? How long will this continue?" And what happens next is one of the greatest stories in the Bible. Elijah told the 450 prophets of Baal, "You get a bull, I'll get a bull. You build an altar, I'll build an altar. You ask your God to send fire, I'll ask my God to send fire. And the God who answers by fire is the true God." Well, the prophets of Baal agreed, and they went first. They called on the name of Baal from morning till noon. "Baal, answer us," they shouted. But there was no response. No one answered. When it got to be noon, Elijah began to taunt them. "Shout louder," he said. "Surely he is a god. Perhaps he's in deep thought or busy or traveling. Maybe he's sleeping and must be awakened." Elijah would have flunked a course in diplomacy. The prophets danced, cut themselves, and raved all afternoon, but nothing happened. Finally, Elijah asked for his turn. He poured 4 jugs of water over the altar 3 times. Remember, this was a time of drought. And then he prayed. "Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known today that you are God in Israel, and that I am your servant and have done all the things at your command. Answer me, Lord, answer me, so these people will know that you, the Lord, are God, and that you are turning their hearts back again." No request for fire was made. The prophet just revealed his heart, and pow, God answered. Flames fell from the sky. They not only set the altar ablaze, but also the wood, the stones, the soil, and they even licked up the water in the trench. The result? When all the people saw this, they fell prostrate and cried, "The Lord, He is God." Elijah's prayers not only moved God to action, but also changed the hearts and minds of a nation. When we invite God into our world, He enters in a powerful and life-changing way. Remember, Elijah was no different from you or me. In fact, James would later note how impressed he was that the prayer of such power came from a person so common. He said, Elijah was a human being just like us. He prayed that it would not rain, and it did not rain on the land for 3.5 years. Then Elijah prayed again, and the rain came down from the sky, and the land produced the crops again. We would say that Elijah was nothing special, just a human being like we are. But God heard his prayers because he prayed not eloquently, but earnestly. God delighted in hearing Elijah's prayers. He delights in hearing yours as well. Why? Simple. Your prayers matter to God because you matter to God. Your prayers are special to God because you are special to Him. You aren't just anybody. You are His child and His heir. And when God saved you, He enlisted you. He gave you not only forgiveness for your past, but also authority in the present and a role in the future. This life is on-the-job training for eternity. God is preparing you to reign with Him. As the Apostle Paul wrote, if we endure, we will also reign with Him. You are a part of God's family, and ruling the universe is the family business. Your Father has a vested interest in your development. And when you seek to honor the family business, He hears your request. God, grant me deeper faith so I can serve You. Show me where to live to bring glory to Your name. God, give me a spouse so I can serve You. God hears these prayers as quickly as they are offered. Why? Because they come from His child. Will He do what you want? Well, perhaps. Or perhaps He will do more than you imagined. Regardless, stand firmly on this unshakable promise that when a believing person prays, great things happen. Memorize this promise. Ask God to bring it to your mind whenever you find yourself in an impossible situation. Write it where you can find it. And remember that you're never without hope because you're never without prayer.